Hello and welcome once again to It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. I'm your host, Frank Weber. So glad you could join me in the forest one more time this week. Hope all of you who are on spring break are having a wonderful time, or I know some of the parents take spring break off with the kids as well. I am not on spring break this week. Texas Tech is not until next week, and it's not a big deal, but I thought at one time, if I recall correctly, and I'm no lawyer and I don't really understand how a lot of these laws work, but I thought the state of Texas tried to synchronize all the spring breaks just like they, including K through 12 in universities, and then they also tried to tell the K through 12 like what was the earliest they could start the fall semester or something like that, and all those laws and rules apparently have expired or are no longer valid or whatever. So now we have all different dates again. Like I said, it's not a big deal. I'd rather have it a little bit later than earlier if I had to pick spring break. But here in Canyon, the Canyon ISD and West Texas A&M is on spring break, but down the road in Lubbock, spring break is next week. So go figure, I guess. So that kind of leads me into a discussion. It's about something that I haven't really talked about much on this show, and what I do during the rest of my time, since I'm only doing right now a solo podcast for about 20 minutes a week, and where I had been and where I'm wanting to go and things like that. So I am a student at Texas Tech studying a master's in financial planning and business administration, which will probably take 2 years total. I just started it this semester. I was in dentistry for a while, and I still think it's a great profession. I still think it has a lot of potential, but there's a lot of things that have happened in it, a lot of things that have changed. Some of it is just the way it is, and maybe it has to be. And then the rest of it I really kind of felt was preventable, and maybe didn't have to happen, but ultimately it's turned into something that I didn't really expect and haven't been planning for, which is kind of a big slap in the face sometimes if you work so hard and many years and go through a lot of heartache to get to a certain point, and you work there for a number of years, a fairly good number of years, I guess 18 more or less, since I graduated from dental school. But I got to a point where basically you had to ask yourself, how much is a job worth? I mean, if they could pay you all the money in the world, would it still be worth it? Because there's a lot of toll on various aspects of health, and life is too short to be unsatisfied in a job or a career and lose your health and other things as a result of that. So I've pivoted. This show is part of what I'm trying to do now and in the future, and of course I'm studying also financial planning and business administration, a master's degree. And getting into this topic here, I also had some difficulty because dentistry is kind of a hard profession to get away from. There's not a lot of options in it outside of clinical practice and teaching that subject, and so I'm kind of starting afresh, and maybe I wind up practicing financial planning and business. I mean, I do want to own a business again, but we'll see where all that goes. But I have a unique and funny personal story that happened this weekend in relation to one of the classes that I'm taking right now at Tech, a marketing class. It's a fun class, generally speaking, and I'm enjoying it. We talk a lot about real-life examples of companies and how they market and promote themselves, and it's a whole lot of fun. Part of what we learn about there is education has changed a lot since I was in dental school, for instance. I mean, so much more, everything is online now, and that's how I'm taking all my courses, and that has changed things a lot. You may not meet your professors or classmates in person anymore, which is kind of sad to me, but it's kind of what I need to do right now. But anyway, this marketing course, part of what we learn in there, part for our learning, is a online discussion board or message board where we read a chapter or two chapters, and there's a set list of certain topics that we can post and comment on, and so we go ahead and post and comment there. It seems very highly academic, and but people give some great examples as well, and I enjoy it. So one of the topics that we were just studying was on the topic of brands and how brands become synonymous with a company. You have a lot of very identifiable ones out there like Coca-Cola and GE and things like that. And I started several of the thread topics, or actually the topics were already pre-selected, but I started several of the threads last week when this discussion was going on. And the last one I did was based on a survey that I received from Texas Tech Athletics, because I have purchased tickets from them in the past and gone to some games, and they asked me about some of the brands that were visible at games. Actually, I don't think all of them are actually corporate sponsors of Tech, but I know they asked about some electricity providers, and then also some beers. And I couldn't really answer too much about the electricity providers. I may have had, now that I remember it, I may have had one or two of them back when I lived in Dallas 20 years ago. And then the beers I knew a little bit more about, but I've kind of cut back on that, for my health recently. So, but basically it was a marketing survey for the university ultimately, but basically about those brands and what I thought and felt about them, and the fact that it's being a survey, that's a perfect use of or perfect way to do marketing research, and we were just learning about that in this last unit. So naturally I went ahead and posted about it. That's not the only function for those surveys, though. So I posted about that coincidental experience, and then one of my classmates did the first person who responded to it. It seemed like last week when we were doing this, it was kind of lightly added to all those message threads for some reason. But one of my classmates who decided to add to my thread on the survey decided to say that, oh yeah, I went, I don't know if she knows that I was a dentist or not, because I think I've mentioned that before on there, but she decided to say, oh yeah, I had to take my son to the dentist last week, and I got really mad and pissed off. That's just my paraphrase there. I don't know. I don't think she put that in the thread, but I got mad and pissed off because they told me they accepted my insurance, and then I got there and they said they didn't accept my insurance, and then a day later they sent me a survey, and I was really mad about it, and blah blah blah. Because a survey is actually another way you can do, of course, measure customer service. Companies measure customer service, but I thought it very odd and ironic that she happens to come back and say something about a bad experience with a dentist's office. Now, I don't know, maybe it was a corporation or maybe it was a solo practitioner. I don't know. I wasn't there, but you had several things in her response that really hit a chord with me, and it's kind of funny to think about, and that's why I'm telling it right now, but you've had a lot of people who for some reason find lots of reasons to complain about dentists and dentistry and the job and the career that I was in, and some of it is over insurance, which is kind of becoming a blight on healthcare and possibly in other areas of life as well. I mean, a lot of people aren't getting what they pay for with that, but I felt that was worthy of sharing with you because that's another example of a way that I can't ever seem to get away from this profession. I mean, somehow it always follows you around, and sometimes it's unplanned and unintentional. Because I was simply commenting on a pretty pure, well put together marketing survey that I received from Texas Tech Athletics, and then my classmate is responding with a survey that she had to fill out regarding a dental experience for her child. And believe me, I'm sympathetic to all the needs and concerns out there. I mean, everybody is different. Everybody wants to save money. Everybody wants to get what they need and be done with it. But I had to share that with you. That was totally unplanned, and that was also coincidental with our branding exercises that we were discussing last week, and for which we have a test over this week, and also have a second test in another course in tax planning, which really makes my head spin. That's another story I could go on a lot about, but I can't remember one time if my accountant told me that the tax law is actually pretty simple, and I would tend to agree with him that it is. But when you start getting into all these deductions and exceptions and limitations and all this stuff, it is just totally crazy. And so hopefully by the time this drops Wednesday morning, I'll be planning on taking both of these tests here within a day or so, I hope. But anyway, not to get too tangential, but I also, as far as taxes go, I don't know if I mentioned on this or not, but I supported President Trump's tax cut back in 2017, I guess it was now. And I do that because, the government doesn't need as much of our money as they seem to think they do. That's my personal opinion. But it was also kind of a slap in the face because they took away a ton of deductions on there, and I'm learning about all those right now. Where basically you got a little bit more in your paycheck, but then when you went to do your return, you found out you couldn't deduct a whole lot of things, and you wound up in many cases actually owing a little bit more. So I imagine sometime this year that law is up for renewal perhaps, and so I really hope that they take a good look at that this year and try to ease some suffering for a lot of us, because it's not as straightforward as just cutting taxes. You've got to be able to have some benefit and deduct some things as well, because it's just crazy. I think the government just wants to continue to make as much money as it can, and I think Trump listened too much to Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell on that, by the way, back then, and that's what totally drove me crazy about that law. So hopefully they fix it this year. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about real quick, and this relates to brands, brands being an identity and a label and all sorts of other characteristics for a company. And I don't own any stock in the airlines. I'm not sure that airlines are really a good stock to invest in these days, especially with the market kind of falling on harder times lately, be that as it may. But my wife and I are really kind of saddened in Southwest lately. And I'm not sure if many of you listening out there feel the same way as we do or not, but they managed to create an image and a brand, if you will, that really set them apart from the rest of the airline industry. They had, short, convenient flights, open seating, 2 free checked bags, and a lot of times I think maybe one of the better things is a lot of times they had stewardesses or flight attendants and pilots who had a really great sense of humor and made the journey fun. And that was the way it was for a long, long time. And recently we're getting news in here about an investment group that has, I guess, bought them or something that is making all these changes, and they're, instead of being set apart from the industry, they're morphing into an airline that looks like the rest of the industry, which, as far as domestic flying goes, is not real good. I'm disappointed, because they're talking about, reserve seating, checking for bags. What else are they doing? It's like it's kind of they're morphing into something else for sure. The rapid rewards. Apparently, the frequent flyer program they're decided to just do this the other day and have it take place immediately instead of giving a certain waiting period. But they changed the way they credit certain flight tiers toward rapid rewards. And so people who are flying a little bit cheaper, like the Wanna Fly Aways, which is what most people get, are not going to make as much on rapid rewards as they used to, whereas the business selects are getting most of the points. But then there's a group of people who are the true frequent flyers, who are like the A-list selects. They can fly at whatever tier they want to, and a lot of them fly, want to get away, so that doesn't necessarily do them a great deal of good. That's a perk for flying with them as often as you can, and that's getting taken away. My wife and I are particularly upset because we live near an airport where there are a fair amount of Southwest flights, but we're not a major airport. So if we want to go somewhere, we usually have to fly to Dallas first, or sometimes even to Austin, and then find a connecting flight that sometimes is going back the other way. And, flights that are just jumping around. And we looked at taking them to Maui for Christmas, and it was going to be like something ridiculous, like 17 hours. And, even getting to another part of the country, like my wife is going up to the Seattle-Tacoma area next week for work. That's a 7-hour flight. We don't have a direct flight to Denver anymore. So you got to fly somewhere in another direction before you can go in the direction you need to go. I don't know. It's just frustrating to me because, I've been a fan of theirs and I've been flying them for such a long time, and now it just seems like my profession in dentistry, it seems like Southwest is falling by the wayside. And the only thing I really wish would happen is that Southwest and other American-based airlines could become more like the foreign airlines, which are many of which are so much better in terms of customer service. Maybe not all of them, but I've heard some really great things from some of them. And I decided to use my platform this week to try to tell you about that. I know flying as a business and something that needs to be done has changed a lot over the years as well. You always hear the stories about people being unruly on planes and dealing with security issues, and people wearing their pajamas, at the airport and on planes, and bringing their dogs, and all the hassles, having to bring needed medical supplies and distilled water like CPAP machines through the security, and some of the security officers don't know what the distilled water is for, even though it's labeled and all that. And just a lot of bullshit, a lot more bullshit and a lot more pain, it seems like these days. I mean, there used to be a time when you could bring a friend or a loved one with you and they could sit with you at the terminal. I mean, that was terrific, and can't even do that anymore. It's very sad, but anyway, I hope I didn't depress you too much on this episode today. Trying to keep it lighthearted, and I try to tell you things that I hope are kind of funny. Maybe it wasn't as funny as I would have liked it today, but I think they're still pretty interesting. Maybe they're still sending a message. Someone's trying to send me a message or something. I'm not really sure, but I hope you're edified by it. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up now for this week. I do plan on having an episode come out next week when I am on spring break, even if I'm not here at the house for part of that week. So you can look forward to that. It's hard coming up with topics week to week, and I want to try to use something that I experienced in life, and sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're controversial, sometimes they're kind of neutral. Hopefully they're never boring. But as always, as people like to say, sharing is caring. I'd love it if you can share the show with a friend or a family member. Even have them hit subscribe. And, don't be shy, but leave me a message or a comment in the comment section. I'm always looking for ways to make this a better show. I know there's a lot of room for improvement, but this is what I have for now, and I enjoy it. I work hard on it, and I hope you enjoy it as well. So anyway, this is your host, Frank Weber, signing off from the forest. Look forward to seeing you again next week on It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. Bye. Love you. Take care. Have a great rest of your spring break if you're on spring break.